Hello and welcome back to Salute Your Sports. Kamen and Tom Castleman. It has been a few weeks, but we are back for our NBA Conference Finals preview. Last we talked about the playoffs, it was our playoff preview. So we'll go over some of the surprises, some of the best storylines. Then, of course, we got Thunder T-Wolves. That's a 1-0 lead for Oklahoma City after game one. Pacers Knicks going on as we speak. The Knicks with a 7-point halftime lead in game one, recording on a Wednesday night here on May 21st, Tom. So many good storylines, so many bad storylines with all the injuries in the NBA playoffs. A lot of dramatic comebacks, 20-point deficits, no problem for a lot of these teams. Should be an awesome, awesome finish to the playoffs with some new, fresh faces. Maybe some teams and players that we didn't expect would be here. Maybe some teams that haven't been here in quite a while. New York Knicks. So should be an awesome, awesome show, Tom. How are you doing? And how ready are you for this awesome NBA Conference Finals preview show?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm actually kind of enjoying this era of parody where I think we're now going to be going on 7 consecutive years where a different champion or new champion is going to be crowned at the end of the season. And like you said, Common, a lot of these teams haven't been here before. Like you said, I don't think any of these teams have been in the championship since the ABA merger.
Oh, the championship, because the Pacers were there last year, like the conference.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, like for the NBA Finals.
Yeah,
I
NBA
should clarify.
Finals. Yeah, I got
We,
you.
we're going to have a new NBA champion, and nobody from this Final Four has won a title since the ABA merger. Which I mean, Knicks had a couple titles, I believe. Maybe the Thunder, as the Sonics, had a title prior to they had a championship from the ABA. But this is going to be a really fun finish, I think. And I know that the NBA historically has had dynasties. You think about however many iterations of the Los Angeles Lakers,
The
the
Celtics.
Celtics owning an entire decade, the Bulls running most of an entire decade. And even within that, you get little pockets of the Spurs being consistent contenders and winning several
The
championships. You have the
Warriors.
LeBron era, certainly the Warriors. We're now in this era where we have these different teams winning with not necessarily always like these like stacked superstar teams. We've seen a lot of continuity teams now coming together and winning titles. 2 years ago, it was the Denver Nuggets with Murray and Jokic, adding in Porter and Aaron Gordon, really having a very homegrown core talent, adding in around that Boston Celtics last year, very much the same way. And when we look at these teams that are competing now, fairly similar for at least the top seed, I would say, the odds-on favorite, if you will, in the Oklahoma City Thunder. You look at the Pacers, a lot of homegrown talent there with pulling in Pascal Siakam, getting some talent around. Knicks have done a similar thing, bringing Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson, who has taken his game to another level since joining them from the Dallas Mavericks. And then, of course, you have the Minnesota Timberwolves as well, who had that swap. They bring in Julius Randle to kind of complement Anthony Edwards as a 1-2 scoring punch, perimeter and post. So there's a lot of different interesting things from the teams that are here. And like you said in the intro, kind of some interesting storylines getting us here and some unfortunate ones. Of course, Golden State, Steph Curry going down, Boston Celtics, Jason Tatum going down, Denver Nuggets banged up by the time they got to game seven. So I guess maybe if you want to include the injuries and some of these burgeoning superstars, you're more than welcome to do so. But what are some of the storylines? What are some of the things that have caught your eye from the NBA playoffs to this point?
Yeah, I want to talk about the surprises first, and I'll kind of get into some of the storylines, which the injuries do include that. By
Hmm.
the way, turns out that I know there's a lot of talk about the Luka Doncic, Anthony Davis trade, which, again, I don't think it was a good move for the Mavericks, but I think the dumbest thing they've done actually turns out is not actually the Luka trade. It's actually not re signing Jalen Brunson a couple years ago. Because, would you rather have Jalen Brunson or would you rather swap Luca and Davis? I mean, You can still have Luka and Brunson both, by the way.
Hmm.
And that's not the case out there in Dallas. But I think the biggest surprise of the playoffs at the current moment has to be the Boston Celtics getting eliminated this early. Because there's a lot of upsets right now. We have a 6 seed in the T Wolves, 1 seed in OKC. I think we have I believe it's a 4 and a 3 out in the Eastern Conference Finals. So a lot of the top dogs are out. Top 2 seeds in the East. We got the 2 and the 3 in the West are out. But I think the Boston Celtics was pretty shocking. And
Mm.
I'm not as high as on the Celtics as you are necessarily. I know you've been picking them now for years. You were right last year,
Hmm.
not so right this year. Although, did you pick OKC over them?
I did pick
You did pick
OKC. I believe
OKC
I
over
had.
them.
I may be
But
mistaken. I may have had OKC preseason as well.
okay, we'll have
Maybe.
to rewind the footage. But
Hmm.
uh, you know, I'm the first person to tell you that Jason Tatum is not a top 5 player in the league. I don't think he's even in the discussion. I'm not even sure that he's a top 10 player in the league, Jason Tatum.
Mm.
He's right on that borderline. But I will tell you this, of any player in the top 10 discussion, he has far and away the best supporting cast. Jaylen Brown, who, by the way, is not far off a top player himself, top 10 player. Kristaps Porzingis, he can score, he can rebound. Drew Holiday does a little bit of everything. Derek White could drop 30 points on any given night. Pritchard can drop 30 points any given night. Veteran leadership like Al Horford. Just the sheer amount of depth and talent on the Boston Celtics. I guess that saying, live by the 3, die by the 3. They died by the 3. They
Mm.
did not have a plan B. Even before the Tatum injury, they were up like 20 points in game 1. They're up double digits late in game 2. They should have been up 2-0 instead, found themselves down 0-2. And let's be honest, all due respect to Jalen Brunson, who's a terrific player. OG Anunoby, terrific player. Karl Anthony Towns, terrific player. I think if you polled the average journalist, the average fan, GM, players in the NBA, they would still tell you the Boston Celtics team, even without Jason Tatum, should beat the New York Knicks in a 7-game series. For them to lose by 40 something, what was that last game? I mean, it was ridiculous how badly they lost. It's kind of what I've been saying. I've been the guy kind of doubting Boston the last few years just because I felt like they don't have a plan B. They don't have a guy that can get to the bucket and score. They're so reliant on the threes that data to them shows you they're going to win, over time, but not this time for the Boston Celtics. So I just thought that was shocking. It was very bad. They were never really in the series. That to me is the biggest surprise. But I think a lot of surprises. I mean, the Cavs losing as a 1 seed, they did have some injuries. I'm not saying they didn't. Some guys, a couple, Garland missed game 1, Mobley, I believe. A couple of the guys came back, but they were playing hurt. And not so much that they lost the series. I mean, the Pacers beat them in 5 games. There was some blowouts there, 20, 30-point games. Like, if you told me Cavs are banged up, Pacers win a close series in 6 or 7, I'm probably not shocked. But it was a 5-game series. It was like a gentleman's sweep. And some of these games were not even close, Tom. I mean, Indiana, I think, had a couple blowouts in that series where it was dominant. So I think, going into the playoffs, not just you and I, just about every single analyst out there, the prevailing thought was the West will be competitive. The East
Hmm.
is going to be Boston and Cleveland in the conference finals. Boston's not there. Cleveland's
No.
not there. And they were never really close, either of those
Yeah.
teams. They got completely clobbered, in their playoffs. So, I think Houston losing as a 2 seed, to me, not shocking. I picked the Warriors.
Yeah.
Golden State's got the playoff pedigree. I think the Lakers losing, a mini surprise, but
Mm.
certainly not massive, given all the chaos they've had. A very good Minnesota team. Maybe a little surprising, but not too much. But the East is where the surprises were. The fact that we
Yeah.
have a Pacers and Knicks conference finals, I think that's wild.
Feels like late 1990s. I mean, I'm going to take the surprise on the flip side regarding that Celtics Knicks series. I actually I'm going to say that this is more credit to the Knicks than anything else because this is a if you want to get like storyline, really dig into the narrative, into the culture of what the team is. This is a franchise or this is a team that has had a coach that is perceived to have a ceiling because of how he treats the regular season, how he
Too many
plays his
minutes.
players too many minutes, so to speak, how he really is known for good defense, grinding out a game, and hopefully you find enough offense somewhere along the line. You have a player, actually a couple of players, in Jalen Brunson, who's been perceived as there is a cap, there's a limit to how much Jalen Brunson
He's
can
too
carry a
short.
team. He's too short. He's not that fast. You know, he was a second round draft pick. He works his butt off in Dallas and gets to that point that you were talking about, Common, where Dallas had a choice to make of do we want to keep Jalen Brunson? And they said, you know what? We don't think that he's going to be a big enough star. We'll send him to New York. We'll take our chances with a Kyrie Irving. We'll take our chances with pairing other folks around Luka Doncic. And you look at, say, a Karl Anthony Towns, similar, cap ceiling to his to what he can achieve, or rather, I should say, to what he has achieved to this point. And you just have an entire team, an entire coaching staff that has all had this cap where you and I said it. I think just about everybody said it. This is a team that's going to get past the Pistons. That's not going to be a problem. But based on their talent, based on their coach, they're pretty much always going to be capped as win a series, maybe be competitive in round two, but ultimately these guys aren't going to be in the conference finals. These guys certainly aren't going to be in the NBA finals. So I think that this has been a surprise because we typically don't like to trust in something until we've seen it, and we haven't seen this level out of this team and this
Since
amalgamation.
Latrell Sprewell, Patrick Ewing, and Allen Houston.
Yeah, like we just haven't seen that from the New York Knicks in such a long time, and we haven't seen it from any of the individual components that have come together to be this whole team, this one machine. And here they are. I mean, it's game one of the Eastern Conference Finals. We'll get into our picks a little bit later on Pacers versus Knicks, but I think that they're probably the biggest surprise because they have bucked the trend or they've bucked the narrative the most. I would say Pacers probably would be a bit of a second, only because of their seeding, though. This is something that found out, of course, after the playoffs began, that since the calendar turned to the year 2025, Indiana Pacers 42-16, winning at a 7.25 clip throughout the last half of the season, which over 82 game slate would equate to a 59 win team, which
They've been the
certainly,
best team in the playoffs, Tom. Overall, the Pacers so
and
far,
yeah,
no
and they
question.
and it was interesting. The first round, I think you and I both went Bucks on that one, and it was a cakewalk for them. I mean, Dame Lillard had some issues with blood clots heading into the series, and of course with the significant injury. But even with Dame in the limited capacity that he was there, it was still no doubt Pacers. And it's like, okay, well, we can chalk that up to the Bucks being not quite right. Uh, Looking at that series against the Cleveland Cavaliers, you're absolutely right. That was a bit of a surprise and a bit of an awakening, saying, "Oh, so this pace that the Pacers have been on has
Pun
certainly
intended.
been, oh, of course, always has certainly borne out in a way that we weren't quite expecting." So I'd say the Pacers are a little bit of a surprise, but I mean, I think there's some incredible stories with them as well. For me, I'm just gonna toot my own horn a little bit, say there's no surprise out in the Western Conference. I think I only got one series incorrect up to this point, so
Oh,
just gonna
shooting
like take
Tom.
that take
What?
that
I think of
feather
the
sticking my.
Clippers and the Nuggets you missed.
No, I had that one. I had the Nuggets over the Clippers. I went with the upset of Rockets over Warriors.
Oh, how dare you, Tom.
Yeah,
Well, let's talk about some of the biggest storylines because I have
of
a few that
course.
really, really stand out. Unfortunately, I would say this absolutely stinks to say this because this is something that nobody wants to hear as a
Mhm.
fan, as a journalist, as a team executive. I hate to say it, but the biggest storyline is the injuries in these NBA playoffs. I mean, I think none bigger than Stephen Curry getting hurt. I think the Warriors, winning game one. I think they were well on their way to winning the finals, in my opinion. There's a stat out there, Tom, that with Curry on the court, the Warriors have the most efficient offense in the league. With Curry off the court, they have the least efficient offense in the league. So statistically speaking, even at his age, where he's getting older and is just a little bit past his prime, he is still technically the most valuable offensive weapon
Mm.
in the entire National Basketball Association. And a lot about Curry, too. He's the perfect example of a guy that's more than just the stats. His running around, his, 3-point threat, it sets up all his teammates. He gets a lot of the hockey assists. Maybe it's the second pass. Maybe it's because everyone goes to Curry and someone else doesn't go to one of the other guys to get one of those slip cuts, easy layups. So I think the Golden State Warriors defense was looking so good that if Curry played, Minnesota was not going to win that series. That could be my opinion if you want to take it, but having watched the games, I think the Warriors with Curry look like the best team in the league. So as a fan of the Warriors, call me biased, or as an observer, I think the best team in the league is out because their best player is out.
Mm.
So that to me has to be a big storyline. And maybe the second best team in the league, the Celtics, their star player got hurt too, Jason Tatum. Now, they did lay an egg. Tatum got hurt in the second to last game, third to last game in the series. I
Mhm.
think was it game 4 or game 5 he got hurt?
He got injured in game 4.
4, and then
Boston
they
then
won
had
game
that
5 and they lost game 6. But the
yeah.
very end of game 4. So he virtually
Mhm.
was there for most of the series. Even prior to his injury, they were losing the series. So the best player for the Warriors, the best player for the Celtics gets out. I think we had a lot of other injuries. Obviously, you look at like Luka wasn't fully healthy for the Lakers. He was nursing some injuries in the playoffs. Obviously, you take a look at, the Cavaliers, Darius Garland, Mobley, some of their key players were injured. Dame Lillard got injured for the Bucks, of course. I'm not sure they would have won, but obviously that hurt them. Even
Mhm.
like the Nuggets. I mean, Michael Porter Jr. played through a shoulder injury the entire series. He's not going to use it as an excuse, but his shooting percentages went down. It is not easy to shoot the ball when your shoulder's hurt. Aaron Gordon was practically like, I don't even know how he played in game 7. And I know you're going to toot your horn with the Thunder. I mean, a healthy Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter over a 7-game series, I'm not too sure the Thunder get out of that series if the Nuggets are fully healthy. It's a big if. I know it's an excuse, but I think the Denver Nuggets were right there. And I think a fully healthy Nuggets team, especially one with maybe a coach that didn't just take over as the coach,
Mhm.
could have probably won that series against OKC. So that really stinks. You hate to see the injuries. That has kind of tainted the playoffs a little bit. Again, it's a lot of he said, she said excuses. What would have happened? I acknowledge that,
Mhm.
but at the same time, like, I don't know. Celtics healthy for 7 games. Warriors healthy. Cavaliers healthy. We could have an entirely different crop of teams at this stage of the playoffs because that's how it is. You mentioned parity, Tom. There's so much parity, and it is so good to see that. With that said, though, with how close all of these teams are, 1 or 2 injuries can flip a series. It can flip a
Sure.
series 100%. I would, more on the positive side,
Mhm.
I'll give you a couple other storylines to me. Feels like, and this is why it's so frustrating for the Warriors to me, just because, I think Curry and Butler, Draymond Green, they're obviously on not even the back half, the back quarter of their careers. And I think this team, this Warriors team to me, felt like a special, like sort of last dance team. Like they had the right it for now. I don't know if they're going to have it for long term as far as winning the finals. Obviously, Golden State will be a playoff team, but that organization has different aspirations. But
Mhm.
I think we're seeing a little bit of a changing of the guard. Now, obviously, not because of his fault, but Curry gets injured. Warriors exit the playoffs early. LeBron exits the first round. Kevin Durant didn't even make the playoffs. A lot of these teams, a lot of these superstars have emerged kind of new on, the NBA pantheon of stardom. Obviously, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander just named the MVP today, which I will say Jokic should have won the MVP. But SGA, definitely if I had to pick a number two candidate,
Hmm.
you're probably my number two on the MVP board. But you got to win in the playoffs to earn the respect. So SGA had never been to a conference finals before. He's starting to earn that respect for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Obviously, you look at Anthony Edwards, who did get to the conference finals last year, but a lot of folks felt it was a kind of a fortunate game seven. He's earning some respect by getting here, solidifying his stardom. You mentioned Jalen Brunson. He put up a lot of numbers last year. Can he take that next step in the playoffs? Well, certainly he has so far.
Hmm.
And then Tyrese Halliburton, who I think a lot of people
Yes.
consider kind of like a second or third tier star, a guy that was kind of there on that Olympic team to just kind of be there. And he's kind of showing it that he's really good. And he's kind of
Hmm.
scary because I'm not too sure he cares so much about his stats because, one game he might have 12 assists, one game he might only have 6 points, but whatever the team needs from him, he gets it done. So it's kind of like this, like a lot of these guys that I would consider like probably Anthony Edwards and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander a year or two ago were probably second tier stars. They're taking that step to being first tier stars. Tyrese Halliburton, Jalen Brunson. We're looking at guys that are probably that third tier star stepping into that second tier star with their performances. So it is good for the league to have more superstars. I think there's so many good teams, maybe with the exception of our hometown Chicago Bulls, maybe a couple other teams, but probably only a handful of teams in the league right now that don't have a legitimate superstar. I mean, you look at like almost any team in the NBA right now has a go-to superstar, and I think it's good for the league. It's good for the leagues because if all these different faces to shine. I will say the ratings have been down though, so
Yeah.
obviously Curry, LeBron, they do attract a lot more eyeballs than some of these guys, but hopefully these guys stick with some of the fans. And I will say definitely the crazy comebacks. I mean, and what was it? The Knicks came back twice, down 20 points against the Celtics. We had the, Denver Nuggets had a massive comeback. All these like 30-point runs, 40-point runs, just the sheer amount of crazy comebacks. I mean, Boston should have been up 2-0, and they were down 0-2. Definitely think all the comebacks and the crazy storylines, the close games too. It was kind of weird because while we did have a lot of blowouts, Tom, we also had a ton of close games. So it wasn't like there was not a lot of those like 10-point wins. It felt like it was either going to be the last second game or it's going to be a complete blowout. So really cool to see a lot of the close games we saw in these playoffs so far.
Yeah, I think the point that resonated most with me is just how Tyrese Halliburton continues to rise as a star out of a seemingly difficult place to find stars. I mean, when was the last time that we could say that Indiana had a bona fide star? Like probably Reggie Miller. I
Reggie
mean, they
Miller.
had some really good players with the Paul George era.
Paul George
Um,
was a superstar.
I'd say he probably was more of a star after Indiana than he was at Indiana.
That one, when he was against LeBron in the Heat for a couple years, he was
Oh, yeah, he was
pretty
pretty
well
up there. I
known.
mean, but I think that like you said, these younger players, whether we like it or not, and most of us don't like it, are Steph, LeBron, they are aging out, and so it is really fun to see kind of the new players come in because at one point, Steph and LeBron were, relatively speaking, more so for Steph than for LeBron, of course, we're nobodies. LeBron came into the league with greater
Yeah, LeBron
expectations than
definitely was a
anybody ever.
somebody.
He was a somebody coming in, but yeah, I'd say like probably the storyline. I mean, it kind of coincides with the surprise of the Knicks. They're probably number one. I'd say Indiana number two on that one. So I'm trying to think like what other good storylines have been in here that that we haven't really touched on. I mean, I think. I mean, I guess you like to dog on the Thunder, and I'm not like Ever to each their own, but I
They're my
think that
favorite to win, Tom. They're my
yeah, I mean,
champion right
but
now.
but they the steps they have continued to take as a franchise, you don't always get to see quote unquote linear growth from a team. And it kind of feels like we're seeing some linear growth from the Oklahoma City Thunder from the standpoint of they, were a great team last season, came up short in the playoffs and said, hey, we have to make a couple of adjustments. And so it's out with Josh Giddey, in with Alex Caruso, in with Isaiah Hartenstein. And now you look at that team and it's pretty balanced. It's a deep team. They've got talent all over the place. And you just see, the atmosphere that they have at their home court. Just everything about the team just screams like this is going to be a championship team, and that it's one that we've kind of been able to see growing a little bit across the way. It's not necessarily like the Pacers or the Knicks, where it's like, hey, these are pretty solid teams that have caught really, really good streaks that are playing really well at the right time, have been on the benefiting side of some of the unfortunate injuries that have happened in the playoffs. It really feels like from the storyline of the Oklahoma City Thunder, it's just like this is an almost like old school, pretty much like most of the players here are homegrown and developing together. So I think that's been a pretty outstanding story as well. But yeah, I'd say the star turns or the continued star turns for Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Halliburton, kind of becoming now probably the new faces of the league, and how these teams have done a good job of building around these players that might not necessarily have the same level of bona fides that LeBron had coming out into the league, where Halliburton was a mid lottery pick, Jalen Brunson a second round pick. I mean, you'll even look at the Pacers, Pascal Siakam, second round pick with some championship experience for Toronto. I'm trying to think, like Anthony Edwards, is he like the highest picked player? He and Julius Randle
The first
actually.
pick.
Yeah, like he was the first pick of his draft. Julius Randle was the second pick of his draft. Carl Anthony Towns for New York, I think he was a number one pick overall. But a lot of these other stars on these other teams don't necessarily have that super big pedigree. So it's really, really fascinating and interesting to see the development from first round talent, to be sure, but not everybody has come in as the one of one in their draft, so to speak.
Sure. I'll tell you this too. It's kind of interesting. Give you a fun little tidbit, and I guess we can kind of get into picking some of
Hmm.
these conference finals now. But here's a stat that I found kind of fun and interesting compared to, you know, recent seasons of all the star players coming out of a said university. SGA, the first Kentucky player to win the MVP. We've never had a Kentucky Wildcat ever win the MVP before Shea
That's
Gilgeous-Alexander.
fascinating.
Such a storied college basketball program
Hmm.
in recent memory. So many good players. Carl Anthony Towns, you mentioned, obviously. You know, we've had, a lot of these guys. Anthony Davis from Kentucky.
Hmm.
Certainly Malik Monk, I think of. De'Aaron Fox, more recent guys. So a lot of Kentucky players. Devin Booker from Kentucky as well.
Hmm.
But the first MVP, SGA, out of University of
Wow.
Kentucky. So it's one of those. It's almost like a trivia question. We don't have trivia this week, but that's your
That's a good
trivia
one to
sort of like
file
little
away at some
tidbit.
point. Yeah.
But I guess I'll get into picking these conference
Hmm.
finals, and let's get started first with this OKC and T Wolves series. First off, Tom, I'm going to say this: I'm always a believer in you got to prove it to me before I believe in you. OKC was a really good team the last couple years in the regular season. I'm not as down on them as you think. I just wanted to see them prove it to me. Now, for
Sure.
the most part, they did prove it to me. They crushed the Grizzlies. They played a really good team in the Nuggets with Nikola Jokic. Again, I'm not sure what would have happened had Michael Porter, Aaron Gordon been healthy. You know, that's one of those series where it could go 50-50 if they replay a 7-game series, in my opinion. But ultimately, you can only control what you can control. And the Oklahoma City Thunder did get to the finals. They did beat a very good Nuggets team.
Hmm.
And I think to me, it's kind of like you mentioned the word parity. Uh, it's not so much that this team isn't really good. I think now, like I mentioned, there's so many superstars in the league. there's the players overall are so much better. I feel like there's not a team that is an all-time great team in the NBA right now. I don't think there's a team that is clearly better than anyone else because obviously seventh year in a row, different champions. So I don't think there's
Mhm.
there's not a dynasty team in the league. And maybe that's where that sort of like preconceived notion of like comparing this team to a Warriors, Curry and Durant, comparing this team to a Miami Heat of LeBron James, comparing this team to the Bulls, even the Lakers with Shaq and Kobe, the Spurs with Duncan, Ginobili, Parker. Like the NBA right now has more good players, more good teams than ever before. I think we had just so many dominant teams that you thought of like that's clearly the best team. I just don't look at OKC as that dominant. It does not mean they're not the best team in the league, though. Right now, the way they're playing, they are the best team in the league. I do have them winning the championship. They outscored the T Wolves 70-40 in the second half.
Mhm.
And that's the difference to me. They have more scoring, more depth in the series. They did split 2-2 in the regular season. They also split 2-2, 2 years ago. I do think that Anthony Edwards is very good. I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a better overall player. And while Julius Randle is, very good, I think you look at the overall supporting cast on defense and offense, OKC has more around their superstar. And that's what you saw, actually. If you watch the Thunder Nuggets series, I came about thinking, like, not that SJ is not amazing, but Nikola Jokic was the better player in that series of those two guys. But SJ got more help from his teammates.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, myself included, Tom, have wondered can they do it without a true second superstar? Williams is really good. I'm not saying he's not. Chet Holmgren is very talented. I'm not saying he's not. But they're not a legitimate, superstar in the
Right.
NBA. But it turns out if you have six guys that get 9 or more points a game and 8 getting 6 or more a game, so it turns out that if you have so many good guys, there'll always be somebody that is hot from the floor.
Mhm.
And they are top 5 on offense and defense. And defense is consistent. Their defense, as good as Jokic is, he looked somewhat human in this series for his high standards. Let me preface that for his high
Yeah.
standards. You're not going to stop a guy like that completely, but he had some games where he looked a little confused. Had one really bad game in the series, another that was just okay. So I think their defense, which again, a lot of times we get so caught up in offensive talent. Who's got the offensive talent? Who's got the 1-2 punch? OKC is really, really good on defense. The Knicks are really good on defense. The T Wolves are really good on defense. The Warriors, prior to injury, really good on defense. Some of these top teams right now that are playing very good defense. So I like OKC. Give me the Thunder in 7 games. They did score more points this season than the T Wolves did. About 9 more points a game in the
Mhm.
playoffs than Minnesota. So they have a little more depth, a little more firepower. Both teams good on defense, but I do like the Thunder in this series. I don't think it's going to be 30-point blowout second halves. I think Minnesota's going to win a few games.
Mhm.
Looking at maybe 6 games, but I do like OKC to win the West.
Yeah, 6 games for the Thunder seems like the right number to pick, and with not having necessarily that second bona fide superstar that you're talking about, we see, and also with this being still a pretty young team, we've seen them have some inconsistent games within a series where I think it was Game 6, I want to say, where Jalen Williams was just not doing much of anything, but then bounces back in Game 7. That this is a young, inconsistent but resilient group, and that's sometimes all that it takes as far as a team ascending to be a champion. We're talking about a team that went from 20 something wins to borderline 41-41. I think it was 40-42 to 57 wins, and then this past season to 68 wins. This is a team that's continuing to make those steps and grow into what I think is going to be an eventual champion. But I definitely think that there's a counter punch. There's going to be an answer from Minnesota. Um, they're talented in their own right. They're still going to be able to go to their home court, obviously, and they also have a really, really good defense as well. I think that they, on the regular season across the board, just 2 more points per game as what they gave up is
Both were
107.
top 5 on defense
Yeah,
this year.
107 points against for Oklahoma City, 109 points against for Minnesota. So they're going to have their share of games where they're going to be frustrating, where they're going to be bullying the Thunder around. And that's just something where the Thunder are going to have to try to push through and try to grow past it. I think that the Timberwolves are talented enough, are tough enough to get a couple of games. But I ultimately think that the Thunder are talented enough to overcome and ultimately win this series. The more interesting one, I think, is going to be in the Eastern Conference between New York and Indiana. Currently, let's see if I can pull up the game right
85-81
now.
Knicks are leading in the third.
So
About
it's
4
it's
minutes
it's
to go.
fairly it's been a fairly even game. I feel like there hasn't been just kind of like tangentially looking at it. There haven't been like huge scoring swings or scoring runs in this game. And you want to talk about a coaching matchup between a couple of guys that are really, really outstanding, have been in the game for a while, Tom Thibodeau and Rick Carlisle. This is one where, I don't know, maybe we'll be going different ways on this one. For me, I mean, I know I probably should be saying Tom Thibodeau because I would like to see him have success, but I just think that Tyrese Halliburton's probably the best player in this series. Definitely up for discussion. I'm
Okay.
definitely not saying that it's by far and away, but just from the way that the team's constructed around him, it accentuates his abilities to the point that I think that he is capable of being his best self, and I think that his best self is the best player in this series. So it's going to be definitely a fun one. I think this one goes the full 7 games, which means, of course, that Indiana's going to have to win Game 7 on the road in Madison Square Garden. I mean, that narrative enough might be enough to sway me on the New York Knicks, but I think by like 50.5% to 49.5%, I'm going with Indiana on this one, Kamen. How about you?
Were the same but different. This is kind of very interesting because
Ooh.
so I also am 50.5%
Uh-huh.
sure. And I'm also going to go with the Pacers, even though I think Tyrese Halliburton is the second best player in this series.
Mm,
I think Jalen Brunson is better.
sure.
Halliburton's a better passer. Both guys are very close. Halliburton's a little more well-rounded,
Hmm.
but you never know what you're going to get out of him as a scorer. And Jalen Brunson, the guy could score the ball. So I do think the Knicks, to me, actually have a marginal advantage as to who the best player is. A lot of this is going to go down to pace in this series. No, the Pacers want to go up and down. They're averaging
Hmm.
88.7 field goal attempts a game, whereas the Knicks are at 84.9. So Knicks are better at defense. Pacers are better at offense. You know, high scoring games, I think, do favor Indiana, in my opinion, which, by the way, game 1 is a very high scoring game. So I did say I'll pick the Pacers to win game 1. I know they're down 4 right now at the free throw line with 2:41 to go in the third.
Hmm.
I have a feeling the Pacers squeak game 1 out and give themselves a lot of much needed momentum in this series, Tom. So I just look at it like in a league full of parity, the Indiana Pacers have been the best team in the playoffs. I know OKC was dominant round 1, but they were far from dominant round 2. 7-game
Hmm.
series. I think the Pacers, they completely controlled the Bucks series. They completely controlled the Cavs series. They neutralized Giannis. Mitchell did go off against the Cavs, but everybody else didn't do diddly squat against Indiana.
Hmm.
So Halliburton's really good. Again, they're such like a weird team because, you know, Pascal Siakam is pretty good, but like he's not an amazing second player. But it's really a committee. Like they have so many guys again, kind of like the Oklahoma City Thunder, just a lot of really good players. the bench players step up. They play with a
Mhm.
lot of confidence. And that's a team, by the way, again, you might say the same thing last year, fortunate because of injuries, but this is the second straight conference finals they're playing in. So it's not like these guys are just a bunch of nobodies. They were in this position last year, Indiana.
Sure.
You want to talk about teams taking a step forward, but maybe last year they lost in the conference finals. This year, they make the NBA finals. I absolutely love what Indiana is doing right now. I love their depth. I love their tempo. I just love that they just it seems like nothing phases this team. So Pacers to me make the finals. We have the Oklahoma City Thunder, Indiana Pacers, small market teams in the finals, by
Yes.
the way. We know the
Yes.
NBA is cheering for the Knicks to get there, but I'm sorry, NBA. I'm going to be bah humbug to you and pick
Hmm.
the Pacers.
I mean, I think it's going to lead to a really entertaining series regardless because these are both teams that I feel want to play with a little bit of pace. They want to get out and run a little bit. So it would definitely be up and down in that regard. But it's a case where it's, same archetype of team, same kind of level of build where you kind of have you're centered around an all around talented point guard who can do a little bit of everything, or actually a lot of bit of everything, and then you just kind of supplement with players around. But it feels like OKC just has the better, you know, the name brand as opposed to slightly off-brand version
Well,
at
they have the
basically each
MVP,
step of the line. They've got
SGA.
the
Again,
exactly, yeah,
granted, I would have given it to Jokic, but you
sure.
don't win the MVP except for Russell Westbrook that one year when you're not that great of a player. Sorry, Tom.
He was pretty outstanding that season. That was an all-time great season.
Yeah, I know his
If
triple double
anything,
with 42% compared
if
to Jokic with 50
anything,
something
I
percent.
think that Russell Westbrook paved the way for Nikola Jokic as the archetype of MVP of a triple double machine.
Well,
That's what I
too
think.
bad that Jokic couldn't get it, averaging his triple double. Shame, shame. That's another story for another day. So
Oh yeah.
I'll ask you this. I think we're probably on the same page because
Mhm.
even though I do love the way Indiana is playing, uh, again, knock on wood. I don't know if you can hear that because obviously injuries are such a massive part of it. But assuming there's no injuries, would
Mhm.
you agree that whoever comes out of the West would be the favorite in the finals? Because I do think Minnesota, I would pick over Indiana or New York
Ooh.
if they somehow come out as well.
Hmm. That's an interesting
Because
hypothetical.
we're definitely going OKC to win it, sounds like. Which you're welcome, Tom. I've come
Yeah.
around your side of things.
That's interesting. If so, basically, Knicks or Pacers over Minnesota Timberwolves. Who would I take in that one? Let's see. I'm just doing a little bit of like looking at some things on the fly. Records pretty much line up more or less the same. Just a game separates each of those teams.
The
Slight
West
edge on
being
point
tougher,
differential to
Tom.
the
Keep that in mind.
Timberwolves. That's true. Um, I would probably say slight edge to Minnesota,
Thank you.
but it's the exact same margin that I have for saying Pacers over Knicks. It's by the slimmest of margins, and it would certainly be a Game 7 proposition in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, so we agree, which is it's kind of more
Yeah.
boring when we agree. I hate when we're agreeing. So
Yeah.
knowing everything, by the way, the Knicks are winning the whole thing, Tom, because that's what is not on the bingo card.
And you know what?
So
As somebody who appreciates Tom Thibodeau and wasn't a huge fan of the treatment he got when he was more or less run out on a rail from Chicago, that certainly would be a nice feather in the cap. That'd be a nice way to cap off the NBA season if that ended up happening. Even if I know that New York Knicks fans are going to be almost as insufferable as Laker or Brown fans.
oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
they'll let you hear it.
Oh
They will let you hear it in New York if they win
yeah.
the championship. There's no doubt about
Yeah.
that. That would be quite the storyline for the Knicks. It is kind of fun to see the Knicks good, though. It is kind of
Hmm.
fun. I think the NBA is better when the blue blood franchises, hopefully our Chicago Bulls or the next team, big franchise that kind of gets back in that playoffs. Maybe you got
I
that Giannis signing next offseason. Let's wish for the best, Tom.
I will not be holding my breath for any of that.
Hey, they're better than the White Sox, though.
Um, for now, yes,
Uh-oh.
debatable on long term.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. All right. Well, anything else you want to add to the playoffs? I mean, we'll definitely kind of check in for a finals preview, maybe
Yeah.
at some point an update. I'm guessing probably by the time the next show we do, it might be more of a finals preview type. But anything
Mhm.
else you want to touch on we haven't hit on when it comes to the playoffs?
No, I think that we covered everything pretty well to this point, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see how these next rounds of games go. Then,
I cannot wait to talk about it, Tom. As always, such a pleasure doing this show with you. I appreciate you, all the viewers, listeners, watchers. You guys are the absolute best. Hopefully, our picks come true, make us look smart. We did agree on both. So
yeah,
we're either both really dumb or both really smart, Tom. I
nothing
would
positive
say,
on
though,
this
for
one.
sure, Indiana, New York, I could not agree more. It is a classic, and I do mean classic
Hmm.
toss up in this series. So thank you again for your time. Have a great night, Tom. Great night to everyone listening, or a great morning, what time you're listening to the show. Appreciate you guys, and have a good one.